Hello ladies, welcome to Homemakers Radio. I hope that you can get something done while you listen today. If you're new here, please go to the link which I provided and listen to this on the post so that you can see the other things on the post. Sometimes I post some other things that I have shown you or talked about. Also, I would like to thank you for coming today, and I'm honored that you would choose me to listen to while you work. I have my favorite things, and there are many things I like to watch on videos, but you have to take time out and stop and look, and that's one reason I don't do anything live, is that I want you to be able to just carry your device around and go do your laundry and go clean out a closet or just do your daily routine while you listen. And there are plenty of people online who will help you maybe have a schedule or help you with tell you how to clean house. I won't be able to do that. There are plenty of people that can do that, but I could keep you company while you go. And I'm a veteran homeschooler. I've been married to a preacher for almost 50 years, and I also have a lot of ideas, and you don't have to follow anything that I say. It's just for fun. It's just my opinion, and it's just to keep you company while you work. I try to stay on long enough that you could get one room done, or something that is very tedious or repetitive that you would like to have company. Or when my children were living with me at home, I'm elderly now, you see. In the olden days when they were home, they could come and read to me something from their schoolwork while I was doing something that they couldn't do, and I had to do sorting through things, doing things that were just rather repetitive. So today we want to start out with getting ready for the day, and as you can see, I dressed up for you. And I have a little bit of a big day in front of me, so before you go to do your work and to get dressed, I want to share my teacup with you. This is one of the antiques, and you can almost tell an antique by the size of the handle. If you can hardly get your finger in it, or if it's going to get stuck and it's real small, that's one of the characteristics of an antique. But this is so pretty, and I like the art on it. And probably we don't use these. I keep some of them around just for decor, and this is by Regency. There's no date on it, and there's no name of the pattern, but it is so pretty. So that looks pretty in the house, and I think some things you can keep. I know some people are strict minimalists, and if they're not using it, they get rid of it. But if you're not using something and it's not in the way, and you're not tripping over it, and it's just off in a little shelf, and it's not crowding anybody out, I think you can keep it if it's not something that's really a problem. So too many times I think we purge and then we think we have to get rid of things, but I kept everything, and so I guess I'm a museum now. So start out by getting dressed for the home. This is so important because every day, in my opinion and my experience, is so exceptionally special. And a lot of people don't realize that. When you think of how many days you might have sat just waiting for the day to pass, that you can never recover that time. So I think it's very important to get dressed and at least give the day a nod, and give the day the dignity of getting dressed for it, because it is special. And I don't know why people will wait for some special day to wear nice clothes. I think every day you can dig a little deeper in your closet, especially in these times of captivity. And I'm broadcasting from the manse, so welcome to the manse. But in these days of captivity, I think just dig a little deeper in your closet and get something out that you normally wouldn't wear. We all have aprons now, the bib aprons that are kind of have a blouse on them, and we can cover them, and we can wear them while we work at home, and except for exceptional things that we do. Now, I would like to broadcast more often, but I find that I have to have material to talk about, so I have to spend a few days digging a little further into my housework, catching up on some things that I have neglected for years and years and years before captivity. You see, before captivity, I was out and about more often than I was home, and many homemakers were just getting rather frustrated that they could not stay home as much as they wanted to. They had to go out and do all the commercial things that was expected of them, and that in order to run their home, keep their bills paid, and keep their houses in repair, and keep the children in food and clothing. And so now that I'm more home, I am digging a little bit deeper into things that I have let go, and it's so I need that time to do, because as I go, I'm starting to get material and ideas. So I carry a little notebook with me and write down my thoughts about certain things as I am working. So that's why I need a few days between each one. So now I've spoken to you about exercise as part of your we have preparation, homemaking, and then people. Well, as part of your preparation is your appearance, but I believe that exercise adds to that, and it just makes you more vital. It makes you look like you have vitality. But one of the things that I learned from exercising is how to use your home and the opportunity to take exercise in an intermittent way in your home. You know, ways to pick up things, ways to stretch, ways to reach, ways to twist around so that you can work out kinks in your shoulders and your neck while you go. So you don't have to take out that time for exercising. Now, at first, when I was just learning, I would take time aside, and for a 5-minute exercise, it'd take me 15 minutes because I would be so slow, and then I'd back up and start over. And now that I've learned a little bit, I'm able to go through the day with these exercise moves which are basically stretches, and I don't have to take out a time for exercise. And I'd encourage you to find some exercises you like on YouTube. Follow the 5-minute ones, the beginner ones, the stretch ones, the ones that you sit in a chair and do, and choose someone that you like, someone you like to look at, somebody who for some reason has attractive backgrounds. The one I use does do outdoor exercise, so I get to see a little scenery. And when you're in captivity, these things matter. So just choose what you want to do and do it. Everybody is, not everyone is the same, as Lizzie would say, as Jane said to Lizzie. I want to also talk to you today about a book that I had ordered, and it was from Hoffman Media. And I have talked to you about Hoffman Media before because their publications are so beautiful, and there's never a discouraging word in them. They publish Victoria Magazine, Tea Time Magazine, Entertaining Magazine, many of these that I have shown you, and a lot of cookbooks. And you can go online and find them, Hoffman Media. And oftentimes their past issues have gone down in price, and they'll sell them to you at a lower price, which in the olden days when we had to buy magazines off the rack, you would never, if you didn't get that issue, you'd never see it again, because I don't know what they did with the ones that didn't sell. But Hoffman Media still has theirs, and they will sell them to you at a lower price. So today in the mail came the Entertainment Cookbook. Now, why would I even bother with something like this in captivity? But I have had people come by to visit the captives, you know, so I decided to get this Entertainment Cookbook, and it was published by Southern Lady, which is another of the Hoffman Media publications, is Southern Lady. And so this is Volume 2 of the Entertainment Cookbook. Volume 1 is coming later, but it was published in, I believe, let me just check again. I thought it was a new, see, some of these I've never seen because we don't live in an area where you would see any of their publications. And it's from a Southern company, I believe. It's Alabama that publishes these, and the year was 2016. But what I liked about it was they have a whole section, and I love their end papers. Look, aren't they pretty? Each chapter has a kind of like a scrapbook page and with a print. It's called Dining at Home, and I really was attracted to that. And I've talked to you before about dressing up for the home, but what about dining? And I was listening to somebody's decoration video this morning while I was getting ready, while I was getting dressed for you. I was listening to his video, and he was in Europe somewhere, he was talking about dining rooms and what a waste of time and money they were because you'd only use them at Christmas and a birthday or something. But I always wanted a dining room. Oh, I just wanted one because you're dining instead of just eating. And there's something special about being removed from the kitchen, from the rest of the house, where your focus is only on what's on the table and who's there and what you're doing. And I do have a little area in my kitchen to sit in to eat breakfast, but you can get awful distracted by the commotion that is in the kitchen. It's usually piled with pots and pans, and we've just cooked, and just so much to do, and it's not as peaceful as the dining room. And I longed to have a dining room with an overhead light or something that was hanging, on a chandelier. And so I always wanted a dining room. I don't consider it a waste of space at all. And I think even the humblest of homes, even the manse here, has to have a dining room. And I know people that don't know what to do with a dining room, and they think that it's just a waste of space or that it could be used for something else. They won't buy a home or rent a place that has a dining room because it'd be a little more costly. But this dining at home chapter made it all worthwhile to have a dining room, and I do have a dining room. And I don't think I would ever want to go to a house that didn't have a dining room. In fact, the first house we ever lived in, we had to go around and choose where we were going to have a home, and we looked at several. The realtor showed us several places, and when I saw the one with the dining room, it didn't matter about the looks of the rest of the house. The fact that they had a dining room was so enchanting for me that I chose that. And then we went about and found ourselves a dining room table and chairs. It was just so dignified. It just lifted us up, gave us some dignity. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I was going to show you some of the pictures, and I'll have to take the pictures for you and put it on the post. That's why I say go over to my post and look at the rest of this. And it shows you outdoor dining, indoor dining, but it's all for the home. And one of the things that I remember about dining in the olden days was how proud the elderly people were. See, we always thought we were the younger people. They made a big deal out of us because we had a young family, and they just people just kind of took us under their wing, and we got invited out. And I noticed that the old people loved their wedding china. They called it their wedding china. They'd get it out on Sunday and serve people with it. And they had real silver cutlery for the table. And my husband's mother and father would always tell us every single time where the china came from, and when they got their silverware, it was their wedding silverware. And they would tell us, if you have wedding china and wedding silverware, you'll have a long marriage, because they had a long marriage. But in a way, I think there's something that bonds you together with your family when you have these things that are for the family throughout the generations. Because what are you going to do if you split up? You're going to split all that wedding china, and some people would. But it's a shame today that people don't care about things like that. And I was watching a program one time about some woman who had some wedding china, and she'd had a long marriage, but none of her children or grandchildren wanted it, and possibly it's because they had gotten married and got their own, but they were extremely proud of their, it wasn't just proud of it, but they were very grateful for their wedding china and silverware. And when on Sundays now they might have during the week eaten a sandwich while they watched TV or something back in the 1950s, but on Sundays they set the table and they had their best, and it gave them a feeling of, we were all middle class or low income, and just to have that just gave you a feeling of stability, dignity, being established, to have that wedding china and the silverware. Unfortunately, when we got married, it was not done, and so there was no such thing for us. But over the years, I've collected things that I like and called it, our family china. So there's always ways you can get things now if you missed out. So I really have enjoyed this book. I like the color. I like leaving it on on a table somewhere, and I don't just keep stuff like this in the kitchen. They can lay out in other rooms. And I did try a couple of the recipes and really, really enjoyed them. One was these dinner rolls called cloverleaf rolls, and they were just delicious, and they turned out real nice and fluffy and just beautiful. And then there was a main dish that I did here, and a salad and dessert, and really liked them. They're very old-fashioned recipes, and so I wanted to share that with you. And so now I have been taking, since I'm a homeschooler, and you know, once you've been a homeschooler, you don't quit. You just keep going. And when the children are all gone, they're raising their own children and teaching their own children. I keep discovering new stuff that I wish I'd told them, so I'm just telling you. And I've been going through the Bible so that you will have at least a basic concept of it, and so that you'll know who came first and who came next, and if you were ever called to summarize it, you would know what some of these books were. As a matter of fact, sometimes for enjoyment, when we're having a ladies' tea, or the church ladies, I will, as an activity, I will say, tell me one thing that happened, and I will go through the books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, and clear up through Revelation, and ask them to tell me one thing that they think of when I say that word. Genesis, well, they'll say the creation, or they'll say Adam and Eve. Exodus, well, they'll say Moses. So this is my goal here, is when I take you through these books and talk to you a little bit about the details, that you'll at least know one thing that happened in it, one thing that it was about, maybe have a closer idea as to what the timing was, what time it was in history. But today I am going to skip over to another part of it, because there have been so many questions about the difficult person and getting along with the difficult person, and the unusual behavior or the puzzling behavior of people, whether in the home or leveled at you as the homemaker. I wanted to discuss it a little bit. And why we're so puzzled about it could possibly be that over time, our distinction between what is good and lovely and what is not has gotten a little fuzzy. So when somebody does something, or they have a fit of temper, you're puzzled, and you don't recognize it. You kind of, in fact, modern psychology has told us, I guess as early as the 1960s, that when someone does something bad, it's because they have they're frustrated, or they have problems, or something like that. So naturally, that's where our mind goes, oh, they must be having. As a matter of fact, when someone comes to whatever, some kind of social thing, and they become very argumentative and quarrelsome, somebody will say, well, I think she has problems at home. and you know, it could be. But it's too bad that we automatically start thinking of why they would be doing it than whether or not it was right. And so I wanted to read the fruits. We talked about character, and character comes from about people who are underdeveloped in their character, and why character is so important, especially for the home. In fact, character is what makes us want to keep house, get dressed up for the home, go through and get our work done, have something to listen to. And so character, it's from the Koine Greek word charison, which means to engrave, to mark, and it was originally a marking tool. It was a character marking tool, so that, like, if you built a piece of furniture and you put a special mark on it, that would be a character. It's like the alphabet has characters, and these characters are engraved, and so engraved in something. It was a sculptor's tool. So when you look at it and you kind of know that, then you can understand why God mentions character in the Bible. And some of the things that can become part of your character are listed in various lists. And the one I want to use today, and we have to conscientiously try to engrave these character qualities in us, and there are ways to do it. For instance, I taught you last time about self-control and how if you just would do one thing on your list that you just really didn't want to do, that in an area that was bothering you in your home, and just made yourself do it, made it as pleasant as possible to work in your working atmosphere, and tried to do it. I think a lot of the reasons that children don't like work is the miserable way that people teach them how to do it. Work is something to be hated, but done anyway and endured. On the other hand, there are people that just love work. They just love seeing the results. They're at it all the time. And one of the things I was thinking about was I had been going through, I'm still going through that room with those old books, going through them all, and I found the Christie. And Christie was published in 1969, I believe. And I was, and I read it. This is before, for me, before television, because we always lived in out-of-the-way areas when I was growing up, and we didn't have television. And so I read it, and I recently ran across the book again, and started looking at it, and I wanted to tell you that although the movie is just beautiful, and the film was lovely, I forget what year that was published, and I watched all that. It's quite different from the book, and but I suppose they did that for drama. It's quite different from the book. But what I was so fascinated about when I was 16 and I was reading this book was that it was so like life for me in a country situation where sometimes we had to gather water and then heat it on the stove and bathe in it, and just the different ways that we did things that were just a little harder. And this girl had gone, she was quite educated, and so she had gone to help in a church in Appalachia, in a very poor part of the country. And so she had, and she was also a school teacher, so they combined the school and the church in one place, in one building, and she visited her, the families of her students. And, you know, teachers used to do that. They used to be interested in the families that these kids came from. When they were teaching them reading and writing and arithmetic, they visited the families to kind of, so that we could all work together, you know, to help the student. And so she would visit these families, and she was so puzzled by the fact that this area that they lived in was so beautiful. She talked about the layers of the Smoky Mountains and the hills stacked up against each other in the distance, and the colors and just the beauty. And so she asked Miss Alice, who she came to work with, who was also from the area, why are they not willing to make their lives better? You know, they would sit in squalor and not try to improve things, and the houses weren't clean. And she said in a couple of houses she went in, she had to hold something up against her nose because it was so bad. Well, we're not any better in some areas today, and being a preacher's wife of nearly 50 years, I've seen that too. There's such ignorance, and yet surrounded by these gorgeous, gorgeous valleys and pastures and hills, and just the beauty. So she said to, and of course there was a lot of drinking too, a lot of alcohol, and that just kind of takes everybody's ambition away, sucks up all their money. And there were other problems too. There were family feuds, and that just kept people tied in knots all the time. They couldn't really move forward with their lives. There were family feuds. There were a lot of problems. And so Miss Alice said to her, well, the reason they can't is because they look at God. They were all very religious people, but they looked at God, she said, as a harsh taskmaster who was who was the God of a harsh life, a God of misery. And I suppose it was just an excuse. But when we were growing up, and some of you have read my book, Just Breathing the Air, about our lives on the homestead in Alaska back in the 1950s, and our concept of God was a joyful one, but I guess it depends a lot on the parents too. But she said they look at God as someone who wants everyone to have hardship and misery, and so they often miss out on the beauty around them and the opportunities around them because they're just blinded by this feeling of defeat all the time, that they have to live as though they don't have anything. And you know, in many ways I think you can get caught up in that. You don't even have to be religious for it, but it's a bad thinking. It's bad thinking habits, and I wanted to warn you about that. If you want to be happy at home, many of you in captivity now, more than ever, and maybe more isolated, need to make your homes as cheerful as you can. As a matter of fact, the parents are probably the first impression a child will have of authority, the authority of God or of God. So you have to live the love that you teach God is love. You better be living that yourself. And so I wanted to read something about this character problem we were discussing last time, as to people who have fits of temper, or people who out of the blue tell you they don't want to see you anymore, or they hang up on you, or they tell you not to communicate with them anymore, and it can be so devastating. And ladies at home probably more sensitive to it, since they depend on their internet, and they depend on their mail, and they depend on the love of their neighbors and friends, because we are living in isolation. Whether or not we're going through an era of captivity, in general, the homemaker is more isolated. And so her outlets are her friends, her letters, her phone, her communications, and so it can be devastating when people want to cut you off. But it's not always because of something you did. It's because of character problems. And so I'll read you some character qualities from Galatians 5, verse 20 and 20 to 22. I'll just kind of hit on some of them here. And here are the works of the flesh. It says, if you are not led by the Spirit, you know, you're either led by the Spirit of God, the Spirit of love of God, or by the other Spirit. But here's the works of the flesh. They're idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, and things like these. Well, then let's go on to verse 22, to the fruits of the Spirit. Now, these are all character qualities as well as the fruit of the Spirit, because if you develop them as character qualities, you're going to have natural fruits of the Spirit. So the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. And so he said, if we live by the Spirit, let us also keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking one another, envying one another. A lot of times I have noticed, just for my experience, and it could change, you know, because people, the culture can change. Basically, everybody still has the same problems as they did 1,000 years ago, but one of the things that may cause some of these outbursts of anger and impatience that people have with you as a homemaker when you're not cooperating with what they believe is that they are jealous, and that they are also very divisive. They want to divide the home, and they don't like success because maybe they don't have it, and they like to argue. They like to have an argue because it's something that they do every day, kind of like a ritual. Some people just, I guess they just grow up arguing, or it was never caught when their parents were teaching them, but it's a character problem. And so what do? Is you find something in the Bible that you want to work on, like patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control, and work on those. And I don't have a book that I can recommend that has these in it, but you could do a study on this yourself and find out ways to do this. Now, when you look at 1 Corinthians 13, and it talks about love is patient, love is kind, love does not exalt itself, Love is not insist on its own way. Those are character qualities too that you could work on. And you could start, for if you're homeschooling your own children, you could start a character quality notebook and find all these lists in the Bible. And there's one that I've harped on quite a bit, and that's add to your faith virtue, and to your virtue knowledge, and to knowledge self-control. These are all character qualities that you can develop. Now remember what I said about character. It was a sculptor's tool called a kerosene, and it was a sharp tool to engrave and had to put a mark on it, to put a mark in. So that's good to know. Now for those of you who don't like to argue, sadly, there are people that think that that's a flaw, and they think that you should want to argue and you should know how to argue. Most of us, I don't really want to. You know, it's a time waster, and I don't want to. I just really don't want to argue. I got too much to do. And but sadly, sometimes I don't want to pick on either the man or the woman, but I'll just use this example. Sometimes a man who didn't grow up as a Christian or homeschooler, he marries a very nice homeschool woman who, in her family, they were in harmony. They got along well. They had deep discussions about issues, maybe, but they were able to discuss them, and they didn't have to argue, and they just worked things out by sifting. It's kind of like talking together and sifting meanings out of things and learning. And then he marries this very nice woman who never learned to argue, because that's not what's their focus was not on that in their family. And he gets upset because she won't argue. And one of the problems with that is that when you're focusing on whether a person will argue with you, you're not really focusing on character building things. And some people think it's character building to argue. They think it's character building to fight. And that's where we differ with some of these people. If you don't like to argue, but you'd rather do something more productive than arguing, maybe exploring a subject together and learning about it and learning how things work, or learning the pros and cons of something. For instance, a girl who's been homeschooled, she never really had to argue with somebody about something like abortion or about the creation versus evolution. They knew that evolution was quite different than what the Bible said, and they knew the reasons why it couldn't be true, and that they didn't want to live. We're not brought up to, those of us that brought up in the church and in the home and in homeschooling, we're not brought up for the purpose of constant debate. And yet sometimes men will marry these lovely women, and they just love their home, they love the atmosphere, they love this difference. They're so different, you know, from the world and the way that they're educated, but they want this constant debate, because that's how they've lived, is this constant debate, which doesn't really get you anywhere. As a matter of fact, I believe this person called Cynic, that I have told you about before, and I wrote a long article about him on my blog. His idea was to argue about everything. So you see, Marxism is no different, because they say Karl Marx could argue about whether the sky was blue or black, or whether it was nice weather, or if you just said hello, he could argue with you. And this is what it's all about. It's the same old thing. And it was going on in the Old Testament and then the New Testament. It's always through the ages. It's this constant debate, always debating about everything. As a matter of fact, the Apostle Paul warned the young preacher Timothy not to just get into constant wrangling about words, constant debate. It's not good for people. It's not good for relationships. But when you come out of a college or a school and you have this critical thinking bred into you, these people that have had that believe that it's a character flaw if you don't argue back. So there's where there's such a difference, and we have to develop that character of being harmonious with our families. And it doesn't mean that you compromise things that are wrong. But we do not generally raise our children in homeschool to live a life of debate. We show them how to show people from the Bible what is right. and then to expose them a little bit to, or a lot, to some of the false doctrines that are going on in the world. But generally, we have to get on with our lives. We have to work, and we have to raise our families. We can't be living in a constant debate. So the way to stop that is to realize there's an authority, and the authority, of course, is the Word of God. And if you cannot find your answer there, then there's still no point in debating it. But when people learn to respect authority, and that'd be like respecting the parents of the children, then and of course the basic authority of the Word of God, that's when the debate stops. Because even if we don't understand something and we want to keep talking about it and arguing, eventually we're going to have a standard to live by, and that would be the Bible. And so if you don't like to argue, don't feel bad if you had a friend that cut you off or hung up on you, or decided she didn't want to be your friend anymore because you just didn't want to argue. Don't feel bad about that. I don't think it's very productive, to tell you the truth. Now, ladies, this is probably going to be a little shorter today. Because I have to go somewhere, and I just wanted to pop in here for just a minute and give you time to do maybe one thing. And I hope you have a lovely day, and thank you so much for coming. And please leave a comment if you like, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.